Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
To this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs, this is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Jill James, who's the CEO and founder of the Jill James LLC, who focuses on self-funded small business owners. Jill, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Hey, so I love that area of focus because that really narrows the gap down. You know, entrepreneurs is broad, small business owners pretty broad, but self-funded small business owners, now we're talking. So I'm excited to learn from you. Give us a little bit of your background and what your entrepreneurial journey has been like to this point in your career.
Sure. I have one of those stepping stone careers where while I was doing it, it might not have made a lot of sense to people. And then as soon as we put the title COO over it, people were like, wow, you've really done all these jobs. So I started out my career on Wall Street as an analyst. I've worked in several venture-backed tech startups. I was a personal financial advisor to individuals and small businesses for a brief amount of time before I went to business school. So all of those things together, I think, having been through a more traditional business setting and sort of seeing how growing businesses work at an elite level, how finance works, how operations work, how sales work, how marketing works, and actually kind of going through hypergrowth with a couple of startups. That really informed how I think about what works and what doesn't work and like where the levers are, what you need to understand as a small business owner who wants to grow your business, pretty substantially. I would say, we often think of small business as, mom and pop making $50,000 a year, but a small business can make $25 million if it's still a small business. So, there's a pretty wide range in there that people would be pretty happy with as something between the hypergrowth of, $1 billion and $50,000.
Yeah, we don't
these are all achievable.
Unicorns all the time,
right,
but
exactly.
That's when they happen. That reminds me, what you said reminds me of something way back in the day when I went to business school, and one of the examples was, I think it was Japan, where they're like, and this might have been many years ago, it might still be, you tell me. But, you come out of school and they put someone in a organization and you start for 6 months or a year in manufacturing, and then you move to marketing, then you move to. And the thinking behind that was you will avoid so many problems with over-promising and not being able to deliver. Like, hey, I'm in marketing and we can get that to you in the next 2 weeks. And then you go to operations and manufacturing and they're like, no, it takes 6 months. So now you've set the expectation. So using that as an example, I'm confident that when you are working with your clients on strategic operational strategy, and it's not just let's be an expert in, it is this holistic approach, right?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the big challenges, especially for first-time founders, is they have a great idea, they understand the customer, they know what they want their product or service to be, they have all these ideas, and then they start it, and they're like, no one told me all this stuff that I really don't like to do that I have to do to run a company. Yeah. But they're not quite at the point yet where they can source it or that they have the knowledge yet to understand how to manage someone who's doing something from them. They don't know what they're asking for. And that side of the business is something that we can keep that founder in their shift to CEO focused on things that they love to do in the business. And that is a major driver of growth, of knowing who they are, knowing what they like to do, and knowing what they're very, very good at. We have to match up both they like to do it and they're good at it. And then figuring out where do we need to fill in their knowledge to the right level so that some of those things that you and I learned in an MBA program, like what's the right level of that for a small business owner? You obviously aren't going to be structuring a bond offer. Nobody needs that, right? Yeah. But there are certainly some things around, financial management, reporting, core operational function, some of those things that you do get out of an MBA. It doesn't make sense for most founders to go and sit in that kind of program, but they certainly could use a number of those critical points to kind of level up and be able to speak the language of business.
I think that's a huge point. It reminds me of a book I bought over the holiday break last year called The Visual MBA. And I was sitting in a bookstore and I was like, "Ooh, that's interesting." And I love, images and graphics and infographics. And this book, I literally right now forget the name of the author, but just Google The Visual MBA. It's an entire MBA curriculum in one book, all in different chapters, and they're like 2 pages each, but it's all like these infographics, just like images, pictures, and they just get right to the point. Well, now all of a sudden you have a 30,000 or a 60,000 foot view of how things operate with, maybe a profit and loss, and maybe you don't need to go, submit for grant funding, but you need to know how a profit and loss works, and then how that ties to marketing, how that ties to. So what are some of the ways that you have found running a self-funded company differs than what people's expectations are? Like maybe, hey, I'm going to, not go for public funding. I'm going to run my own company. And their impression is this, but now they realize, oof, there's more to it than just, having to wear all these hats.
Absolutely. So what I have found in terms of helping those folks who want to kind of have a progressive, fast-growing small business, again, not hyper-growth, but their ambition might be double or triple, and they have a number in mind that they want to get to within a certain amount of time. Those are typically the parameters I work with. So I have found like when you're at 0 up to about 100, 150,000, there are a lot of frameworks and courses and other things that help you get through that period. If you can get to about 150, it starts to be about who you are as a CEO, what you want the company to be for you, what success looks like. There's a piece of it that is about who you are and what you want that defines how we design the business to make that growth happen for you. Because I find if you don't have a clear objective, I want to get to here, I want people to work with for me or not, right? I want to be able to pay myself a certain amount, right? You have to have those objectives, right, or the business won't be fulfilling. And I find that's one of the gaps of if you're following traditional, more VC-oriented or hyper-growth-oriented business advice, it's just grow, right? Yep. That's the objective.
Grow the top line.
And grow at all costs, right? Yep. Grow the top line at all costs. And when we're self-funded, we have to think about how are we funding that growth, and a big amount of it has to happen through highly profitable sales. So that is, again, the process of business design. If I know as a CEO, these are what your values are, what you want to get paid, kind of the size of business you want to have, we can design the business around where are your best opportunities for profitable products and services, really help you understand the gross margins it's going to take to both pay you as you go and self-fund the growth of the business, get you with a really healthy balance sheet. So if you do want to use debt financing, again, any kind of loans or any kind of borrowing, credit lines, you have an excellent opportunity to qualify for those things and be able to pay them back, right? We're not, we're using them for operational growth and really functionally understanding where am I taking this business and why? And when I can see that intention in the CEO of I'm doing this, not that, this is who I'm for, this is who I'm not for, I know this customer will pay what I'm asking, they are not a price-sensitive customer. When we start to hone in on those things, that is when rapid growth really happens and sustainable growth, because we have a customer base that really aligns to who we are. They want to work with us because we mean something.
And let's unpack one of those points you just made, which is, the right kind of growth or healthy growth and not just that top line. And it kind of brings up the thought of like, too many times it's like, let's fill up the bucket with top line revenue and then it's just flowing right back out because there's holes in there. And if you're spending, a lot of people will say, oh, we did 2 million last year. And it's like, Yahoo, but you had 2.4 in expenses. Well, it doesn't matter what you did on the top line. And so that's so many times we see on Shark Tank, know your numbers. And you have to know, many times you have to realize that if you invest X number of dollars in a marketing or an advertising campaign, what's it doing? And yes,
Right.
you spiked sales for whatever time frame, but are they the right kind of sales? Are they just dragging down your operations? Is it profitable? So talk a little bit about what some of the indicators are that would make you think, okay, we like metrics, but let's not look at vanity metrics. Let's not just get, top line, up 40% when in reality you've done nothing to the bottom line.
Yes, those are very good points, Mike. And I think the number one thing that I look at with founders is, have you paid yourself?
Yeah.
Right? Are we assuming all of this is happening and you're not taking any pay? Because at that point, the numbers aren't real, right? You have to get paid, right? If you're self-funded, you have to take some kind of distribution or salary from the business. And if it's, unless you are intentionally saying, no, for the sake of growth, I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to mark that I could, if I wanted to, I just want to grow faster, right? So there always has to be that factor of your effort that you've put into the business. If you are not factoring in pay for yourself, that's a non-starter to me. You do not have a successful business.
Yeah.
Another is, again, it's around gross margins, because that pays for everything else. So I spend a lot of time with my clients as we get started, helping them understand what that means. And for every effort that we make, for every sale that we make, how much does it cost to deliver it? What are the resources it takes to deliver it? And then, how does that affect how we grow, right? So is this scalable to the level you want to scale to, right? It may not be infinite scale, but is this going to get us to the size of business without having to have 5 other products, offers, lines of business?
Yeah.
Could this substantially do the work of being your flagship? And I think that's one of the things that early entrepreneurs often kind of cast around and try a bunch of stuff. And at some point, there needs to be focus around your one best bet with your best customer that you love to work on, that you can do in at least a somewhat of a scalable manner. At least there are repeatable things there, even if it's a services engagement. Things have to be repeatable and done the same way in order for you to not just be a pure consulting or an opportunistic organization. So what is that for you? And we spend a lot of time honing in on what is that best offer, and that customer who's got the willingness to pay and the ability to pay, and is that a big enough market to get you to where you want to go?
And I think we could unpack that for like 4.5 hours on each side of that equation, right? Because that really gets down to exactly what success in business is. If you are trying to be all things to all people, you're nothing to nobody, because they're like, if you got too many SKUs, then it's like, unless you're an Amazon. But typically in a small business, and I think the SBA calls a small business 500 employees or less. Well, that's pretty big, but in a growing business, like your clients you work with, all of a sudden you're like, okay, what is this? What do I want to be known for? Where's our wheelhouse? If we were to get 10 new projects in, what would that look like? And where would we be high-fiving going, we love these because we can deliver value and the margin is great and it's a fair value to the client. And then where are those clients? That is a recipe for success. And then you just start polishing and fine tuning. And then sometimes the best marketing is a job well done. So you start getting those case studies and start getting those testimonials and referrals. And then it starts just building upon each other. Is that some of the ways that you work with your clients?
Yes, exactly like that. Very few of my clients use paid media to grow their companies. Yeah. Sometimes we do it as a test. But until you really understand who you need to sell to, how many sales you need to make, right? Being on the ground floor and having those conversations and really making sure you know your customer and you're closely aligned with them. And it's more so even just, not just understanding what their needs and wants are. There's a new level of it that so many buyers now are looking for. Like, I want you to be aligned with me on values. I want to know that I'm working with a company and giving my money to someone who thinks the way I do about what business means in the world. So you have to stand for something. And I think those 3 pieces together are that before you start to pump out scale in the world, you have to have a very strong grounding in who are we, why are we doing this, who are we for? We do not compromise on price. And I think that's the number one problem I see with small businesses. Of course, we compromise on price all the time, and we cannot go for the price buyer, which means we just have to say goodbye to a lot of people, right? But figuring out, that upper third of the market that wants what you have and isn't price sensitive, right? That's a lot of work.
It is, and it's a lot of faith and a lot of guts to go, think you know. But you think about it in the medical realm, what if you had a need for a highly specialized type of medical, procedure or whatever, and you went to this top specialist and you're like, I need your help because you are the one. And they're like, okay, well, here's this. And you're like, what is this going to cost? And they tell you, and then you're like, well, could you knock off like 30%? And he's like, okay, sure. All of a sudden you're like, really? You don't have price talks with, the top specialists in the world in the field of whatever medicine. So you have to think about that you are the solution to this problem your target audience is facing. And now all of a sudden you take that, who are we and what do we want to do? And you then have to take another step. In my opinion, one of the next steps would be, how do you communicate that? Now you get it into the messaging, and as well as I do, people's attention spans are like the snap of a finger. And so now how do you communicate your value proposition in a really quick, easy, concise way? Because as Donald Miller says in his great book, Building a Story Brand, when you confuse, you lose. So what do you talk to your clients about on now establishing that messaging?
Yes, that's a great point. And when we're starting to talk about messaging, I think everything that we do, again, in that upfront of like, is this who you are? If we put it through that filter, right? How we write job descriptions, how we make videos for social media, how we write when we write, on LinkedIn, other things. Where is the right place for your customer? And are you consistently saying, this is who I'm for? And that, I think, is the thing, just over and over. You both have to say, this is who I'm for, and then show that you're doing it. So if you say, we stand for this, and, it's performative, people are going to see right through that. Yep. So finding ways, I think, of, living what you're saying you're doing in your business. If the people who work for you and with you are also saying those things, I think that's really powerful. So we try to work through, testimonials, client case studies, social media posts. Video is very powerful. Being able to hop onto your own channel and just kind of say what you need to say. And if you're doing that consistently, you will draw people to you. So a lot of it is just with that focus, getting the repetition of helping the market understand, this is who we are, this is who we're for, this is what we stand for. You just have to get used to that. You're going to have to say that a lot over and over, and then people will start to join you. But I think one of the things is people want to diffuse the message because they're like, well, they already heard this from us. What's something else? And that is, you have to say it so much more than you thought you did at a foundational level.
Right. And have you read the book, Building a Story Brand?
I have.
I just love it. But one of the teachings in there is what you just said, because much of marketing is an exercise in memorization for your client and prospect to hear what you do so clearly and over, not to the point like, okay, already, but more than what you feel like you need to say, so that then people are like, oh, well, and here's this is more of a branding test, but a certain commercial out there is like, in 15 minutes or less, we can save you, and you can finish that 15% or more. Sure. Well, Geico. So it's that exercise in memorization, and you don't need to have these long mantras, but you really, really feel like sometimes you get that, myopic techno babble, you know what you know, so you're going to talk about it, but people just want to understand it just like at a base level. So I think those are just super, super important points. So let's wrap up with this, Jill. What's one last teaching point or aha that you would like to bring out from this conversation? And then what's the best way that someone can reach out and connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I would say the biggest thing is to know which advice is for you. There are a lot of frameworks and courses and media that you can read, and at a certain level, probably when you crack the early six figures, there is a point where you have to make the business yours, and the advice that you take and the people that you invite in to advise you in the business have to be about you and where you want to go, not their success or someone else's business and how they did it. You have to own that this is my business. I'm going to do it my way, and I want people who are aligned with me to help me grow. And that's going to help you a lot to have that ownership. I think that's the shift into that CEO space. of, I own this and this is how I'm going to run it. These are the people I want around me. And being really clear on that for you, designing the business for the outcome that you want and having the people around you who can support that, that is really going to accelerate your growth as a self-funded business versus kind of generically pulling things off of what you see working for other people and just trying them out.
Yep. I love it.
And in terms of getting in touch with me, if that's something that appeals with you, I write a weekly newsletter that's specific for self-funded small business owners who are, typically in the first 5 to 7 years of their business, all the way from things that you need to remember that trip you up operationally, compliance, finance. But I also write about what it's like to run a business like this, or conversations that I'm having with my clients and getting into why it matters and how to navigate those waters as you're trying to make decisions about, who you are and where you want to go.
Excellent. Well, Jill, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'll make sure to have your website hot linked in the show notes so people can check out all of the things that you offer. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.